On this channel, I have already name dropped free and open source movement quite a few times. Uh, Both programs, like specific programs, and just the movement in general, and also the philosophy a little bit. But the more I talk to people, both in real life and over the internet, the more I come to the conclusion that most people don't actually really know what free and open source means. So I decided to make this cute, short little video which serves more as a pointer for you to make your own research in the future. This is just very quick overview, very quickly going over the best sources that you can go ahead and read about or read from. And basically, I'm not going to go in depth or too in depth over anything. I'm just going to quickly give an explanation and point you toward a direction for our next learning journey. Okay, so to kind of start off, I would say it's probably a good idea to revisit a little bit of history. So, the free and open source movement uh, was started by a guy named Richard Stallman, which is, you can see this picture of him kind of deified as a meme. I want to clarify that this is a meme. I'm in no, I'm by no means in no way implying that Richard Stallman is this amazing, awesome human being or maybe a deity who cannot do wrong and we should worship him and whatever. This is just a meme. I'm sure it's obvious to most of you, but maybe there's a few, how should I put this? Maybe there's a few people out there who do not catch on to quirks really well. So I am by no means saying that Richard Stallman is not a flawed human being. He's definitely, on the spectrum. Let's be honest about that. He's definitely on the spectrum. He has said some weird things in the past. He's a quote-unquote weird guy. I have actually had the great privilege and great honor to meet him in real life, or I guess not meet him specifically. Like I didn't talk to him or had a beer with him or anything. But I did see him live, and he was as sharp and as witty and as I don't want to say arrogant, but if you have ever seen Richard Stallman have a lecture or specifically answering questions from the audience or from reporters, he can be a bit feisty, he can be sarcastic, he can be very witty and all of that. And recently there has been news that basically Richard Stallman is suffering from some kind of cancer. And when I saw him live, he actually was bald actually, and he even lost his signature beard. He basically lost his entire Jesus look, which for the first minute that I saw him was kind of sad. We all had to wear masks to prevent him from accidentally catching COVID or any other disease, that can be spread by germs. And he kind of walked into the room, and you would not recognize him basically, right? He's bald, he doesn't have a beard now, but when he opened his mouth, it was still the same Richard Stallman that we all know and love. So this guy is not going anywhere anytime soon. I just want to stress that, clarify that. And he's still going strong. He has been facing some controversy recently because of some weird stuff he said. Again, I already mentioned that. But I don't think there's enough merit to actually cancel him, quote unquote cancel him. And I have incredibly mixed feelings about cancel culture as well, like in general. I think it's stupid and we shouldn't do it to people. Like we shouldn't cancel. And for some reason, even though I consider myself to be a leftist, like post-left, anarchist, whatever, uh, the, the the witch hunting, I call it witch hunting, the witch hunting on social media, on the general like cancel culture, seems to be kind of a lefty thing, a lefty concept, which I do not understand why. I mean, I guess I do, you know, kind of haha herd mentality kind of bullshit. But I know a lot of kind of lefty oriented people who, for whatever reason, jumped on this stupid bandwagon, sorry, of just witch hunting people for little to no reason and canceling careers and doing all this crazy shit, which I don't want to get into it, but it's a complicated situation. And I'm sure this is his blog, like Richard Stallman. And actually, you can read an article. He posted it on his blog, which you can view at stallman.org. Very simple. And this website has recently popped up, stallmansupport.org. And basically, if you want to get into why there was a big witch hunt, why there was quote unquote cancellation of Richard Stallman, why all this happened and how, then you can go ahead and read into this. I have read it, and basically my stance is A, canceling someone is kind of dumb. I mean, it depends on what the person did. But it's another one of those things where it is very often misused. It's like a weapon basically, and whenever you centralize any kind of power, bad things usually happen. So I'm not a huge proponent of this cancellation culture, especially on Twitter, etc. Also, I don't even use Twitter anymore, especially because of shit like this. But like I said, it's a complicated situation, and that does not mean that Richard Stallman and his contributions, and basically he's the granddad of free and open source, right? Of all kind of freedom movements, all these hackers, basically, hacker movements, hacker groups. He was definitely and still is the quote unquote founding father of the hacker culture, right? Along with Linus Torvalds, because Richard Stallman, apart from creating free and open source, also created the GNU project. And you may know, or you may not, I guess, but you may know that Linux is sometimes referred to, especially by nerds, as GNU/Linux. And the reason for that is because Linux actually consists, or GNU/Linux, modern distributions such as Debian, Ubuntu, and most distributions that you can actually think of, actually consist of the GNU part, which Stallman was the main person responsible for creating that, and the Linux kernel itself, which was made by Linus Torvalds, right? So basically, all kinds of stuff from the GNU C compiler, the GCC, which you have probably used if you're a programmer, to cryptography standards, and and programs and so much more. All of that is thanks to and due to Richard Stallman and the free and open source team's work. Basically, the GNU is the program suite, and Linux is just the kernel. So without GNU, you wouldn't have all kinds of stuff that you are used to, and without Linux, you wouldn't have the actual kernel that you could run your distribution on. So yeah, this is why cancellation of Richard Stallman was a mistake and it was stupid. One silly little comment made by a potentially, most likely, more likely than not, autistic person. Okay, let's just get it. Someone on the spectrum, right? Like, Richard Stallman isn't the most in tune with other people when it comes to conversation and conversating and relating and whatever, right? Like many of us, let's be honest here, many of us nerds are probably somewhere on the spectrum. And to cancel a person who contributed so much, even if you just, even if you, even if you don't take into account the fact that without him the free and open source project would probably not exist, but even just computing, like most Windows programs are compiled using GNU C compiler, and and most programs nowadays either have an open source library, a framework, or are just a fork that was repurposed, right? So even just his giant contribution to computing in general, like, are we really going to cancel this fucking legend, this giant whose shoulders we all stand on? The entire computing industry should be at this man's feet, and yet uh, here we are actively canceling him and calling him, I don't even want to say what, because he made some silly comments, which, yeah, should he be more careful about what he says, especially on the internet, the comments and all the kind. Yes, he should, but again, is he responsible for his actions? Yes. Is he probably on the spectrum? Yes. Should we cancel him for saying, for expressing his mind, even though we might disagree with it quite a bit? But should we cancel someone who contributed so much to the computing world and the world in general? Well, I think not. I think not. Okay. So that's about it about Richard Stallman. The reason why I gave him so much quote unquote screen time on this video is because he really is that instrumental, and for many years, and for many people, including me, even to this day, he is the de facto face of free and open source. Like, he is the, I don't want to say mascot because that sounds derogatory, but he is the face of free and open source. Like, when you say FOSS, I think Richard Stallman. It's just how it is. He was extremely and still is extremely instrumental in free and open source movement, and we should not we should take that into account, and we should not, sort of gloss over it just because he said some weird things in his blog and in his emails and stuff. So yeah, as they say, behind every genius is a little bit of madness, and it's definitely the case here. And yeah, now, one of the reasons why Richard Stallman was and still is so influential over the computing world, over user freedom and etc., is because of its actual philosophy. So Richard Stallman, way back when in the 80s, proposed or theorized what he called the four freedoms of software. And the four freedoms of software are as follows. The first one is the right to use software at your discretion. So, when we take it more broadly, what this actually means is when you use a program, when you use a distribution, when you use an operating system, you should really be using the software when you want. You should have the maximum amount of control over the running processes, the running kind of code snippets and everything else that might be going on in the background. Because whenever software runs without your consent and without your discretion, bad stuff happens. Bad stuff like telemetry, bad stuff like excessive resource usage, because since it's proprietary, you do not see all the running, you do not know what's going on in the background. You might have compatibility issues and so much more. Just so many problems arise from software running without your consent and without your discretion. My favorite example is probably in Windows. If you're using Windows or if you have a VM, boot into it and go into Task Manager. You will see some very concerning stuff there, and one that is always funny to me is there is an executable called the anti-malware service. And this anti-malware service, now I do not have any metrics to back this up right now, but I know from anecdotal evidence, because I use Windows on a VM, that this little bugger, which anti-malware, what the hell does that even mean? What the hell does that even mean? I have no idea, right? Anti-malware executable. Okay, so like it scans for malware in real time or whatever, and this software just kind of runs in the background without my consent, without my discretion. It just kind of runs there and eats up my resources. Quite a lot actually as well. Like, I imagine it's doing some memory scanning, so by definition it's going to slow up your computer and make it more sluggish. And the more, blue-pilled Windows users would tell you like, oh, what do you use? What kind of an old-ass computer do you use that you are worried about a few resources missing? Well, A, what the hell do you care what computer I'm using? We all know that a ThinkPad from 2010 is still the best fucking laptop that has ever come out. You can screw off with your Macs and your fucking Windows laptop. We all know that ThinkPad is where it's at. That's A. Why should I throw away an old computer and buy a new one which has more resources, so that I don't notice that all of these executables take up my fucking computing power? Well, what the hell do you care? Why do you, as a consumer, why do you kind of just lick the boots of big corporations and basically tell me to spend more so I can use my computer which is a product that I'm supposed to buy from them at a higher price, and you're telling me how to do my computing? I'm not even going to go into this any further. Basically, fuck off. If you think like this, I think it's idiotic, and you should probably think about what you're saying. Uh, yeah, basically, let's just leave it at that. So that was the first kind of freedom that you should have with your software. And the second one is the right to study the software. Now, this touches on multiple things. Most of what I've already said about discretion and etc. You want to have the ability to study the software. If you yourself are not a software engineer and you do not care, then you want someone else's ability to read the software. Because when they can read the software, they can see scary stuff happening, right? They can see trackers, they can see telemetry, they can see potential compromises. They might even discover some potential exploits, security issues, whatever. Because when everyone can see the software, then there is marginally better chance that potential bugs and issues and spying features will be discovered more efficiently and faster, and it will not be swept under the rug by some giant conglomerate, right? We see this all the time. Practically the most secure software out there, and any serious security researcher or anyone who has ever worked in the cybersecurity field will tell you that free and open source software is the most secure software out there. And one last note on that is there's this quote that anarchists often use, or people who generally believe, mostly leftists, right? Mostly post-left people who believe in freedom, but also in communes. It's like, well, your freedom is my freedom, and the freedom of many is my freedom. And the reason for that is, as I explained, the more people, the more brains present, the faster these things can get uncovered, and the faster and the better we can prevent our collective enslavement, basically. So hopefully I have made that clear. And also, last but not least, when you have the right to study the software, whenever you're a hobbyist or you're a programmer, as a profession, you're a professional programmer, you're a hobbyist, or you're a student, mostly you're going to study free and open source software, right? Because if you want to study something like Windows or the sysinternals and whatever, you have to buy courses and lectures and blah blah blah. And obviously there's a lot of non-free, as in paid courses by relating to free and open source. Actually, most good lectures are not going to be free of charge. But the point is, if you're poor, or if you just do not have thousands of dollars to blow on certifications and courses, nothing stops you from going to GitHub right now and going to, I don't know, Python category and just git cloning GitHub repo to your local destination and just playing around with the code just like that. And you cannot really do that with Windows, can you? So that's another huge plus regarding the free and open source community and the software that gets developed. The third right that you should have as a software user is the right to modify the software. And the reason why you should be able to modify the software is because again, I'm going to use a very practical example of that. If you have ever used past versions of Windows, like Windows Vista, Windows XP, etc., or Windows 7, and now Windows 10 and Windows 11, you know how drastically the UI, the user interface, can change. Right? They changed so much. They added so many just weird features, weird new windows, weird new setting options, weird new stuff that no one really cared for. It used to be in big, one big setting directory, and you could just change virtually whatever the hell you wanted from there, right? But now you have to go through 300 different window boxes to change a few things. And especially if you're a senior, or you are just used to a certain way a program or a operating system used to be, you know the quote, "You cannot teach old dogs new tricks." Well, I don't know if you have ever taught your grandma or grandpa, or maybe your parents, how to use computers, but it's hard enough. It's hard enough to show them really basic stuff. And now you basically, if you still use Windows, you have to go through this, ritual all over again in every couple of years or potentially months. Whenever some manager whenever some corporate manager decides that we need to justify the existence of code monkeys in our giant corporation, and it's been a while since they made any major updates. Fuck you, let's go change some shit for like no reason, but it's going to show up in the changelog, and my boss's boss will see that my team is doing something. Basically. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad, but god damn it, we are doing something, right? And that by in of itself justifies our existence. That is sadly how it works at many corporations. I can tell you that much. And basically, it's just a huge pain in the ass. And this does not happen with free and open source, because even if you have a version that is drastically different from previous versions, you install an update of a program, like, I don't know, say they decided to change LibreOffice, the entire UI tomorrow, right? Now I'm going to obviously update my repo, and with that I'm going to update my LibreOffice packages, right? And lo and behold, the whole UI is changed. Well, shit. I'll probably go to some forum where there's going to be 100 different people who are also pissed like me, because they changed so many things that I was just used to, and now I don't know where anything is, and I cannot orient myself in this new UI, in this new program. And there's going to be 100 people who get sufficiently pissed off that they will just take the previous versions of the software, and they will either modify it, or they're going to host it for you to download, basically. So you can remove the new version of the software, and you can go to the previous version of the software, which is maintained by the 100 or so pissed off people who do not like the new changes. Now, this simply does not exist under proprietary software. Okay. Last but not least, you should have the right to share the software, and you should have the right to share your or someone else's modified version of said software. I think this is pretty self-explanatory, and I'm not going to dwell on this too long. Basically, when you have the right to use software at your discretion, when you can study the software, and when you can modify the software either by yourself or via community or whatever, then obviously you want to actually use the software and share the software. You want to share because, like I mentioned, your freedom is my freedom, and why should I not be willing to share what I've made? Programmers write code so that people can use that code, right? So why would you not just share it? It seems like common sense. But also it goes the other way. If someone decided that they have this cool program, but they will not share it with you because I don't know, they just don't like you or whatever, and they just do not share it on public repos. Well, then what's the point? So really, I think that's why these repositories, GitHub and Git in general and whatever, this is why these services exist, because you should have the right to share the software so that A, someone else can use your software, and B, you can use someone else's shared software. So this one is paradoxically, I think, the most important freedom of all of them. Or rather, in conjunction with all of these, this one is the most important, right? Because without this, I would not be able to use Cavewrite. I would not be able to use the OBS Studio with which I'm recording this video, and I will not be able to use GNU/Linux. So that's about it, guys. Hopefully you have learned something new, or maybe you killed time by listening to some random guy on the internet ramble on about... Oh shit, it's been 30 minutes. Okay. So I guess it's about right time to close this off, and I bid you farewell, my friends. And remember, free and open source is the way to go, and your freedom is my freedom, and my freedom is your freedom.